And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the head librarian of Book Club, Michael Smerconish, and our special guest, Mr. Jim Abbott.
I just said that that's something I've always wanted to do, which you had the opportunity to do many times.
It's a beautiful ballpark. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It means a lot. I'm really touched.
Jim Abbott, welcome to Book Club. It's a great thrill, and you should feel heartened to know that there was a tremendous demand. We had to limit the number of folks to 1,000, and that took a little bit of arm bending because initially we were at 500 and then we were at 800, and I'm convinced we could have filled the place if we'd had the opportunity, and I think that's a real tribute to you.
Well, thank you, Michael. Like I said, I'm so touched that so many people would come out, and I'm sure a lot of it is a tribute to you, but I'm so touched that so many people have connected with the book and are excited about the book, and we get a chance to talk about it, and to come to places that are so far from my home and a place where I never even played, it means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
There's a vignette early in the book. You're at Elaine's on the Upper East Side, a famous watering hole, and someone approaches you, the bartender as a matter of fact, and he has a Pete Gray baseball. Everyone who knows you knows you're so affable and accommodating, but you hesitated in this case from signing. How come?
Well, when I was with a couple buddies of mine and we were talking about baseball, and all of a sudden there was a bartender, a great guy, he came up with this baseball, and he said, I'd like you to sign this. On the other side of it is Pete Gray. And obviously, for people who don't know Pete Gray played during the World War II era. He was missing an arm, and he was famous and a great player. But I was uncomfortable signing a ball that the intent was just the association of two guys who may be seen for a label. And that was something I tried to move past my whole life, was the label. I didn't want to be known as the one-handed pitcher or the one-armed pitcher. And the idea of a ball being out there with just that intent struck me as wrong. And I didn't know really if I had the right to assume that Pete Gray would want that either.
It's clear from the book that your parents were a great source of inspiration and remain a great source of inspiration. Talk to us about your father's why not philosophy.
Well, my dad was a character. He had a tendency to take a left when he should have gone right. But, my parents are my heroes. They had me at a very early age, and there was a lot of uncertainty in their life, and me coming along caused them to take a real hard look at where their life would go, and they sacrificed a lot for me. And the fact that I was born missing my right hand added even more tumultuousness to an uncertain time. And what I love about my parents is that at some point they just decided that the focus should be on what I was given and not what was taken away. And so from then on, my dad was always about why not? Why not? Let's try it. As long as your grades are good, I don't care what you do. You can play baseball, you could play football, you could play anything you want. As long as your grades are good, let's give it a try. And that optimism, that belief that there's a way to do things, forever influenced my life.
By your freshman year, you were no longer using an artificial limb. That was your choice, not that of your parents. What was your thought process?
Well, when I was a kid, and first growing up, my parents tried to find ways to help me to get through life. They tried to find ways that I could do things in a classroom or the different environments that I would be in. And one of those solutions that they found was this metal prosthesis, which was shaped as a hook. And I spent some time in a rehab hospital as a kid trying to figure out how to use that, being fitted for it. I came home, and it was a great device and a great tool. But it didn't help me to do the things that I love to do. It didn't help me to play baseball. It didn't help me to play football. And it didn't help me to blend in very much. And so ultimately I gave it up. I think there's a story in the book about seeing that metal prosthesis sitting on the closet one day and just kind of realizing that I haven't worn it for a long time. And it's sort of sad to me because although I never really liked that prosthesis very much, it was a symbol to me of my parents' hopefulness in their effort to try to teach me, that anything's possible.
You describe in the book how your father taught you with a Dusty Baker model of a baseball glove how you'd be able to play, how you'd be able to pitch. Explain that to us.
Well, my dad had that why-not attitude. One day he said, we're going to learn to play baseball. We're going to go play catch. And so he went down to the local drugstore and he bought me this really stiff Dusty Baker model plastic almost baseball glove. And we had to figure out how it was that I could play catch. I had to learn to throw and catch with my left hand. And so we went out in the front yard and tried to figure it out. And I still can't describe it very well to this day. It's just sort of something that evolved naturally. So I brought my glove with me. If you wouldn't mind playing a little catch, Michael.
Jim, at Holly Kong Junior High School, I was 6'4" in my 9th grade year.
And won?
We had a tie. Okay, because we won't be near microphones when we do this, I'll take the side at the backstop in case I drop it, but explain what we are about to do.
All right, so what I had to learn to do was throw and catch with my same hand. So I would catch the ball like this, rotate the glove towards my body, cradle it with my right arm, let the ball fall out, throw it, and then put it back on. I was much faster without a wedding ring and a sport coat, I promise you. Sure.
Oh, I love book club. So in the book, you also discuss how you were not only a stellar baseball player, but also football player, that big game against Midland, and of course, Jim Abbott was what else? A quarterback. Talk to me about that game at Midland.
And a punter. I was a punter.
And a punter.
Football for me, I was sitting at home. It's a funny story. I had run a little cross country. I had played baseball in high school, and I was doing pretty well. And our varsity baseball coach at Flint Central High School, I come from the great town of Flint, Michigan, by the way. Is anybody here from Flint, Michigan that will admit it? Well, Flint to me was an incredible place to grow up because it was a tough town. Everyone knows that. And there was a lot of ways to get in trouble in Flint, and there were a lot of distractions. But it was also a great sports town, and there were great people there, people who took the time to help me to learn to do things in a new and different way, people who literally pulled me into the game and said, you can do this. I tell the story a lot of my second grade teacher in my elementary school who taught me how to tie my shoes. One day he came to class, and I didn't know how to tie my shoes at that point, and I used to go to school, and my mom and dad would double knot my shoes like 6 times over so it wouldn't come undone. And one day, Mr. Clarkson, my teacher, showed up to that classroom, and he pulled me out in the hallway, and he put a film on for the rest of the kids, and we sat chairs just like this, and he said, I got it. I got it. I figured out a way for you to tie your shoes. And that may not sound like a big deal, but he had two hands. And I think about him going home at night, using that clenched fist, working with the loops and the laces and pulling it tight. And that's the way I use to this day to tie my shoes, because of his generosity, his open-mindedness. In football was the same way. I had never played football. The head football coach called me up and he said, Jim, we hear you have a pretty good left arm. We need a backup quarterback. Get down here. You're playing football. And I was on the phone and I said, hey, coach, I've never played football before. And he said, get down here. You're playing. And I walked down to that practice, and I didn't know how to put the pads on, or the helmet, or anything. And I walked out there, and everybody seemed to know exactly where they were going. And they all took time out of that practice. The center on the team, the head coach, the defensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator, to figure out how I could take the snap. That if I got down just a little bit lower, used my right forearm, that I could get the football out. And that I could hand the football off like this instead of like this. And it was just those little adjustments in Flint, Michigan, that allowed me to play the game. And that's why I come from the great town of Flint, Michigan.
I'm tempted to say there's another famous resident from Flint, but why would I spoil the evening? Thank you for that. One of my favorite vignettes in the book is when Don Wilkey, the scout, comes to see you, drives his K-cart across Michigan, and then he writes up what he has seen. And under the heading, Jim Abbott, quote, left-handed pitcher, 6'3", 180, good arm, good changeup, makings of a breaking ball, natural cutter, big competitor, good athlete, plays football, good hitter. And then, as written in your book, over the final line, his pen hung over the paper for a moment before he added 4 more words, has no right hand, as if it's an afterthought, which I'm sure is the way you hoped he would evaluate you.
It was, and I never saw that. When Tim Brown, who was my great co-author on the book, he talked to Don Wilkey, who was the first scout who sort of believed in me and thought that I could play professional baseball. He scouted for the Toronto Blue Jays, and I heard that story later, and there was great debate when I was in high school because I was left-handed, and I threw in the low 90s. I was having good success, and normally a kid with 2 hands, left-handed, throwing in the low 90s would have the opportunity to play professional baseball. And yet there was this debate whether or not I could handle fielding the position or maybe handle a rundown. And Don Wilkey was the first scout who believed that I could handle that missing a right hand was an afterthought.
Bo Schembechler did not like your comparison between he and Fidel Castro. What happened?
Do we have any University of Michigan grads? Go blue, go blue, all right. Well, I went to the University of Michigan during the Bo Schembechler era. And you may all know Bo Schembechler, the great coach of the football team there, and a very imposing figure. You did not want to cross Bo Schembechler in any way, shape, or form in the city of Ann Arbor. And somehow, being young and dumb, I managed to do just that. Our team, I played on the United States team after my sophomore year. And we went down to Cuba. We were the first team to play against Cuba on their own soil, the first USA team to play against them in 25 years. And a big deal was made out of this series that we were going down to play in Havana. It was a 5-game series. At the time, the Cubans were thought of as the best amateur team in the world. Just incredible players. None of their players were yet making it across to play in the major leagues. So we went over there with all this fanfare, all this hype, and all this attention. A bunch of kids, sophomores, freshmen, junior, walked into this giant stadium, a lot like this. Not as pretty or as new, but called the Estadio Latino Americano in downtown Havana. And 50,000 people showed up to watch this first game. and they were jumping around, and musical instruments were going on everywhere, and we lined up for the introductions to the crowd, and this was 10 times as many people as we'd ever played in front of. And when the introductions were through, Fidel Castro walked down from the stands. He wanted to meet our team. The Cuban people were cheering and going crazy, and we didn't really quite know what to do, and we weren't too savvy with our Cuban history, so we lined up and shook hands with Fidel Castro and didn't think a whole lot more of it. We played the games and ended up winning. I won the first game 3 days later, beat the Cuban team, and went home, back to America, and did a press conference where some reporter in the back of the room said, "Hey, Jim, I heard you met Fidel Castro, and I know you go to the University of Michigan. Could you compare Fidel Castro and Bo Schembechler?" Now, being young and dumb and not knowing when to really duck a question, I started in. Well, I think they're kind of similar, very authoritative figures, you're kind of intimidated in their presence, blah, blah, blah. I went on, left the room, didn't think much more about it. Got back to Ann Arbor that fall, and the equipment manager for the football team saw me in the athletic offices. He pulled me aside and he said, "What did you do?" I said, "What do you mean? You compared Fidel Castro to Bo Schembechler? How stupid are you? How stupid can you be?" I said, "Really? I didn't mean anything by it, John." He goes, "Well, I'll tell you what, Bo Schembechler's looking for you. You better hide. That's all I'm telling you. You better hide." So I used to cut through the athletic department to go to the baseball field because I did every day. So I never went through the athletic department again. I avoided it. One day it was really cold outside, so I thought I'd take my chances. I went through the athletic department, and sure enough, who's standing there but Bo Schembechler. He walked straight up to me, and he used to like me because I played baseball. He likes baseball. And he got about this far from my face, just like Fidel Castro. And he said, "What is this stuff comparing me to Castro?" I said, "I don't know, Coach, I don't know." And he said, "You better be getting to class, that's all I know. Get out of here." So, as Ozzie Guillen learned, do not touch Fidel Castro.
You get to the California Angels, you're pitching the home opener, and some wondered if it was a gimmick on the part of a struggling franchise. What were your thoughts?
I thought I earned it. I thought I was there. I was there in spring training. I saw the opening that was there in the starting rotation, and I felt like I deserved to be there. And if you knew our manager at the time, a man named Doug Rader, our pitching coach, Marcel Latchman, who's a mentor to me to this day, and you would know that they were baseball men that didn't make decisions based upon whether or not people would come and show up. I don't think that was the plan.
A member of the audience, Dave DeHart, I hope I'm doing justice to your name, said in the book you discuss the many imperfect kids who often came to visit. Have you kept in contact with any of them? Do they still contact you?
Absolutely. Part of the motivation for this book was to try to answer the questions that I still get to this day. I'm amazed so long after my career is over that I get the emails and the cards from kids around the country, kids who are facing similar challenges as me, and the kids that I used to meet by the sides of the dugout, and kids that I used to meet outside of the clubhouse doors. And when I got to the major leagues, I thought I could move past the label. I kind of made a mistake. I thought that maybe I could be known for how well I pitched instead of how I pitched. I thought I could move past the label of the one-handed pitcher or the one-armed pitcher, but it was a naive notion because everywhere we went, in these beautiful cities, in these beautiful ballparks, families started showing up, and moms and dads, little boys and girls facing challenges that I can't even begin to describe. And I would be sitting in the clubhouse, chatting with my teammates or listening to music, maybe reading a book, and inevitably that tap on the shoulder would come. You know, a clubhouse official would say, "Jim, there's a little boy outside who'd like to say hi." And I'd walk down, I'd take the headphones off and walk down right over here next to the visitors' dugout. And I didn't always want to go, Michael. You know, those meetings to me were a reminder of my own differences, of something that I was trying to move past. And yet, when I got there and I saw that mom and dad, or I saw that little boy or that little girl, and maybe we played a game of catch, I never walked away uninspired. You know, I never walked away not bound and determined to make the most of what I had been given, because that's exactly what they were doing. They're refusing to use the circumstances of their life as an excuse. And they knew, like I knew, that people will forgive that. People will allow that. But you know in your heart what you've been given. And the obligation we all have is to make the most of that ability, no matter what it is, no matter what talent that you've been given. And so, yes, I do get those cards and those letters, and I try to respond to every single one, and I try to write this one-page letter, and I try to send a photo. Sometimes it's a Yankees photo, and people don't always appreciate that. But in a lot of ways, this book was my attempt to answer those letters in the long form and say, this was my experience. These were my parents. This is where I grew up. And this is what I found to be true.
Another member of the audience, Matt Aber, asks, what was it like to win that gold medal? And would you mention some of the personalities with whom you played?
Well, the gold medal, I was lucky in my career. I experienced two really great ninth innings. One was in the Olympics in college when I played for the United States Olympic team. We played in Seoul, Korea. It was a team that loved each other. And we traveled around the world. The core of that team we played in Cuba, we played in Italy, we played in Japan, we played around the United States, not in ballparks like this, in minor league parks. We carried our bags, but it was a team that grew incredibly close together. And we had Andy Bennis on that team, Ben McDonald was on that team, Robin Ventura was on that team, Tino Martinez was on that team, Mickey Morandini, who played here in Philadelphia, was on that team. And we came to really love each other. And we talked so much about the Olympics and winning that last game. And it was the only team I was ever on that nobody cared about their statistics. Nobody knew what their batting average was. Nobody knew what their ERA was. It was all about winning. And so when we got to that final game in Seoul, Korea, I was given the ball to start that game. Mark Marcus, our head coach, was from Stanford, gave me a white ball 2 days before the game, and he said, "You're starting against Japan for the gold medal." And I've never been so nervous before a game in my life. Went back to this high-rise apartment where all our pitchers were staying together, and all my buddies were sound asleep, and I stared at the ceiling just thinking about this game and not wanting to mess it up. And there I was, found myself in the ninth inning, 3 outs away from a gold medal, and got 3 ground balls in a row on 3 straight pitches, straight to Robin Ventura. He catches the first one. He throws it high to Tino Martinez, who was playing at first base. Tino had to jump way up in the air, tag the guy out, and barely got the runner. So we're 2 outs away from a gold medal. Next pitch, ground ball to Robin. He starts to throw it, and our shortstop, Dave Silvestri from the University of Missouri, is screaming at him, "Hit him in the chest, hit him in the chest." Robin kind of looks at him, throws it. This one's just a little bit lower, but okay. Catches it. Tino steps on the bag. 2 outs away. 1 out away, I mean. The last ball, last pitch, ground ball to Robin. He picks it up. Silvestri screaming at him, "Hit him in the chest." Ventura throws it across the diamond, hits Tino right in the chest, and we won a gold medal together. It was just incredible.
Let's talk about September 14, 1993. You mention in the book that your first pitch dribbled up to the backstop. Did you have great stuff that particular afternoon, or had the moon and the stars lined up for you?
Well, the moon and the stars lined up a little bit early in the game, that's for sure. That game came against the Cleveland Indians. Up at the time, they were a good up-and-coming team. They had Kenny Lofton, they had Albert Bell, they had Manny Ramirez had just been called up to that team. Jim Thome was on that team. Up and down the lineup, they were a good, solid hitting team. And I had got pitched against them 5 days before in the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And I got absolutely shelled. 2 1/3 innings pitched, I think 10 hits, 7 runs, 5 walks. My manager, Buck Showalter, walked out and said, "That will be enough from you, Jim." I stormed over to the dugout, I slammed my glove on the ground, and I looked around the clubhouse, and my teammates were kind of turning away from me, and I went up in the clubhouse and I kicked a few things, and it wasn't great behavior. And so I ripped off my Yankee gray jersey, I put on my Yankee t-shirt, and I left the stadium. I just went running as far and as fast as I could go to try to get rid of the anger of that game and what hadn't been a great season to that point. We won the game. We scored 11 runs. I tiptoed back into the clubhouse. Buck Showalter called me in his office. He looked at me and he said, "Do you know we won that game?" I said, "Yeah." "Where were you?" "Running through the streets of Cleveland." "Yeah." "In your Yankee t-shirt?" "Yeah." "We don't do that. Do you understand me?" I said, "Okay." So we headed back to New York, and I'm in trouble with my manager. I'm not pitching well. It hasn't been a great season, and I have to face the same team 5 days later. And so I walked out there, that first pitch on the mound. Matt Noakes was catching behind the plate. He gave me a fastball, and he told me before the game, he said, "Listen, I don't care how well you do. I just want you to trust each and every pitch. That's the measurement of success today. How many pitches you can throw with trust." So I got up on that mound, and I threw the first pitch with all the trust I could muster all the way to the backstop. Walked Kenny Lofton. He was the leadoff hitter, fastest runner in the league. Walked him on 5 pitches. I'm sure Showalter's in the dugout thinking, "Okay, here we go again. He's going to be running through the Bronx here in a second. I don't care what he does." But we got a double play, got out of the inning, the sun and the moon aligned, and that's the way it was. I walked a few guys, a little bit erratic, but slowly and surely the aggressiveness came back and that trust came back. And by the end of it, we were attacking the hitters pretty well.
Something that I asked you about on the radio today, the protocols of baseball. Truly, through 9 innings, no one mentioned anything to you about the no-hitter.
No, I mean, because you don't really know it's a no-hitter until, 5th inning. You're looking out and you look up at the scoreboard and you notice they don't have any hits, and you don't really think it's a big deal because you're too far away from anything happening, and yet there's a subtle change in the stadium. You notice that the fans are cheering on every strike. They're booing on every ball. On every out, there's a little bit louder ovation. And when you come back between innings, my buddies, my fellow pitchers on the team, Jimmy Key and Scott Kamenicki, we were sharing a lighthearted moment for the first 5 innings of the game. And as I come back, they're a foot away. The 7th inning, they're 2 feet away. 8th inning, they're 3 feet away, and nobody's talking. And baseball has a lot of stupid superstitions.
And you would come back and you would stack a cup at the end of every inning. Where are you sitting, by the way? Which end of the dugout were you in? Did you have a place where you always would retreat?
Well, it was the first base side in Yankee Stadium, and I always sat next to the trainers, next to the water coolers and the medical training kit. Maybe there's some symbolism there, but and I had these silly little routines. I like to kind of mark each inning with as a successful inning. So I would take a sip of Gatorade or water, whatever it was, and then stack the cup upside down on the back of the bench. And so for every stacked cup, that was 1 inning of success. And my goal was to stack 9 cups that day.
In the 9th inning, Kenny Lofton, who you mentioned, tries to lay down a bunt. It trickles foul, but it raises the question of how over the years competitors tried to take advantage of your situation. In the book you make reference to, was it Little League or was it high school, but an episode where the coach sends the first several players up and instructs them to bunt. What's that story?
Well, first of all, that was the venue that I chose to be in. So if there was a perceived weakness, I worked hard not to let that be a weakness anymore. I knew that I'd have to field my position pretty well. In Little League, one of the first Little League games I ever pitched, the opposing coach ordered his players to bunt 6 times in a row. 6 straight batters bunted the ball straight back at me to see if I could field a simple ground ball and throw it to first. 6 batters, 2 innings. I threw every one of those girls out. They weren't girls, I promise. But that was always going to be the case, and I knew that, Michael. I mean, sports was where I wanted to be, and I didn't expect anything less. If someone saw a weakness in my game, I expected them to exploit it, just as the same as if I saw a weakness in theirs. And Kenny Lofton tried to bunt in the 9th inning of that game. I in no way took that or interpreted that as an effort to exploit my fielding ability. I thought that was a big part of his game. I think he was legitimately trying to get on base. Had I lost a no-hitter on a 35-foot bunt, I would have been disappointed. There's no question about it. But I don't think he was trying to exploit what he thought was a weakness.
Did opposing teams in the MLB also try and read the way that you were gripping the ball?
A little bit. There was that. It's a ruthless world. Major League Baseball, guys are trying anything and everything to be successful. And I had to hide pitches not in my glove like most pitchers. I had to hide the ball behind my glove like this, which hid the ball from batters, but it didn't hide the ball from the first and third base coaches. So a couple times in my career, a couple teammates of mine would say, hey, the first base coach is bending down and putting his hands on his knees every time you throw a breaking ball, and he's standing straight up every time you're throwing a fastball. And there's ways to deal with that in baseball. But you just create a little bit of uncertainty in the batter's minds the next time.
Rich Troyan is in the audience, and he asks, what in your Major League Baseball career were the most positive and most negative experiences, both on and off the field?
That's a great question. I think the most positive experiences was just to wear a Major League uniform and just to play on a field like this, where the mounds are pristine and the lawn is mowed beautifully. And I never took that for granted. Every time you walked into Fenway Park hours before the fans showed up and you ran out in the outfield, or I went to the old Tiger Stadium where I grew up and which was Major League Baseball to me as a kid. To be out there playing a game that I loved was the most positive experience in the world. And the fact that they paid you to do it was absolutely incredible. And I think the most negative experience I had was the fact that success on those fields meant so much to me that sometimes the pursuit of that success blinded what was going. It blinded my appreciation for being on this field, for being on that mound, and for playing a game. Sometimes I forgot that it was a game. I made too much of it. I made too much of needing success instead of enjoying it and just appreciating what a fine opportunity it is.
Marge Jackson is in the crowd tonight. She says, your book is amazing. Do any of your speaking engagements at schools deal with the subject of bullying?
I've been asked a lot about bullying. I wish I was an expert, but I can tell you in my own life that I was teased as a kid. Obviously, When you're different, kids are going to look for the weakness. They're going to look for something that makes you a little bit different from the other kids. And I heard every name in the book when I was growing up. You know, your hand looks like a foot. I only have a little bit of my middle finger, and people used to say, you know, you're giving everybody the finger all the time. When I wore my metal prosthesis, they called me Captain Hook and every name under the sun. And it's tough. You know, I realize that. And sports help me to fit in. You know, if there was teasing going on in a classroom, I couldn't wait for recess to start because I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to go out there and play football or go play basketball and prove myself. And so that's what I try to tell kids is that find something that you love to do. It doesn't have to be baseball. It doesn't have to be sports. But find something that you can pour your passion and your energy into, that you can divert just a little bit of what somebody else's opinion of you might be. Because really that's ultimately what it is, the power that we allow somebody else over us. And I know that's a very mature way of thinking for young kids, but that's what I try to tell them. You know, never let somebody else's opinion define how you feel about yourself.
Not long after pitching a no-hitter for the Yankees,
Thank you.
you write about the fact that George Steinbrenner took issue with some of your time spent on charitable work. What was he like from your perspective?
Well, George was a tough boss. There's no question about it. I didn't do as well as he wanted me to do with the Yankees, and he was just coming back. He had been suspended, so he wanted to make his presence known with the Yankee organization. They had traded some good players for me to come there and be a good pitcher, and frankly, I was less than a good pitcher for the Yankees. So he was disappointed. He looked for reasons why I wasn't doing as well as he expected me to do. I happened to do a few things in the community. I did some things with Challenger Division. I was on a couple TV programs, and he thought that was the reason why I wasn't pitching well. And so he came out in the papers and said a few things. And did he think that I was doing too much charitable work? I don't know. Did he think that I was distracted? Yes, and I disagree with him wholeheartedly. I gave everything I possibly had while I was on the field, and you know, I tried to do a few things off it, and I think he would understand that. Now, he was a very charitable man.
After you pitched the no-hitter, you tell the story about how the grounds crew worked, I guess, late into the night, retrieving the rubber so that they could present it to you the following day. I reread the book this past weekend, and I'd missed the fact in the first read that the lead groundskeeper himself was dealing with an issue. That had to be a special moment for you.
It was pretty sweet. A man named Frank Elbone was the lead grounds crew chief, I don't know, grounds crew chief for the Yankees. And he had lost part of a hand in a machine accident as a kid. And so we always kind of talked with each other, always kind of nodded and winked at each other, and I knew that he was pulling for me in a lot of ways. And it was a lot of fun. We had a kind of a fun back and forth relationship. And the no-hitter happened, such a great moment, and the excitement afterwards to go into New York and to walk the streets with my wife and the excitement of the city for one night to feel like that. We had a good time. We had a couple glasses of champagne. I came back to the ballpark the next day, and it's funny how the game moves on. You know, you have another game the next day, and everybody else is back out there taking batting practice. Pitchers are all doing their warm-ups. But the grounds crew and Frank Elbone pulled me aside and said, "Jim, we have something for you." And I walked out there, and the night before the game, they had dug the pitching rubber out of the mound from the game that I had pitched. They went into the clubhouse, they had all the Yankee players sign it, and they had the home plate umpire sign it. And as I walked out of the Yankee dugout over here, they had this pitching rubber. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of these out of the ground. It's a big hunk of rubber and metal. It's about this big. It's heavier than anything. And Frank handed me this mound. And we took a picture, and it was one of the most poignant moments of my career because of the effort that it took. to dig that out of the ground, give me that, dig up the new mound, put a new one in, build it all back up, and have everybody sign it in the clubhouse. And I didn't collect enough memorabilia in my career. I wish I would have. But I tell you, that's my proudest piece of memorabilia that stands proudly in my house.
One final question and then one comment from a listener. Here's the question. Patrick Spillane is in the audience with his 8 and 9-year-old boys. He wrote to me and said that he's had many conversations with them about the difference between physical and mental toughness. He wonders what advice Jim Abbott would offer about staying tough when things have gotten difficult and there's a part of you that wants to quit.
Never give up. Don't ever quit. You know, that's one of the lessons, one of the enduring lessons that I took away from my playing days, is how many great things can happen almost immediately after your darkest moments. I think of that no-hitter. I think of how I felt in Cleveland, running through those streets, frustrated and angry. And 5 days later to have that moment and get that no-hitter and see that ground ball and to stand in the middle of Yankee Stadium with your teammates while people give you a standing ovation. And you think, how does this happen? How does this happen? You know, I believe that it's determination, that it's being able to, mental toughness is not some attribute that you're born with. It's something that you can work on. It's understanding what it is that you place value on. You know, whether it's going to be somebody else's opinion of what you think you can do, or whether it's going to be your opinion of what you think you can do. That's what determination is. That's the difference.
Jim, I want to share with you a written comment from one of our attendees tonight. Before I do, allow me to thank my Philadelphia radio station, Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, and all of our sponsors, in particular my good friend Dr. Todd Albert. You know what I never realized until tonight? When you're playing, you really can see all the faces.
I imagine they aren't usually this nice either.
But I imagine you come out night after night and you can identify and get to know the usual suspects.
That's right. There's a few of them here, too. I'm not too happy.
One of them is our mutual friend, Bruce Fiskus, and I thank him for putting us together. Without Bruce, I wouldn't have had the privilege of meeting Jim Abbott. Jim, I want you to know that I have the best producer in all of radio. Her name is TC. She's way up at the top. She is standing 10 feet away from Cindy Webster. I need to keep the two of them separated. It's not healthy. I also have the 6th best technical producer in all of radio, Greg Stocker. He's right there, dressed as a beatnik. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for supporting Book Club on such a special night to meet such a special man. Here's the final comment. It's Pat Marcosi and Gabriel Marcosi. You can see I actually printed this one out. I wanted to get it right. Thank you, they say, no questions, just my thoughts about this wonderful book. In between innings of his perfect game, Jim Abbott tells his story. He allowed us into his soul and let us share his journey. He left nothing out, it's all there. The good, the bad, the struggles, the frustration, the perseverance, the doubts, the caring, the generous heart, and the joy. It was a wonderful read. For those who share a disability, reading this book is a necessity. Thank you, Jim Abbott. Thank you, Tim Brown, for writing this inspiring, magnificent book. I thank you very much for coming to Philadelphia. I know you're about to sign a lot of books. I left one person off my list. Walter Kosh is an individual who's critical to the success of an event like this, and I want to give him a round of applause as well. Thank you, Walter. There's one friend who wants to say hello to you, and then we'll get to signing all the books if that's all right.
All right. I'd just like to say thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It touches me. I'm blessed, and My friends, Mark, David, Cindy, thank you guys for coming very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bruce.